Well, with summertime, that means trauma season. And joining us today, we have got from Mercy Health St. Rita's, the EMS coordinator of Trauma Services, Injury Prevention and Outreach Coordinator at St. Rita's Emergency and Trauma Services team. We've got Brian Anderson, and you've got such a long title, but it's such an important position. So thanks for joining us today to talk about trauma and injuries during the summer.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so immediately I think more kids are out of school, you know, they're outside playing and maybe biking. So what are some safety tips to make sure the kids stay safe when they're outside in the summertime playing around and doing things?
Well, when we talk about summer activities, and we all know we like to be outside with friends and family and doing those type of activities, you know, bicycle safety, we talk about frequently the importance of helmets. So you know, there's numerous injuries, over 130,000 injuries a year caused by bicycle accidents in the United States alone. So with that being said, and with the numbers that we see, you know, from a trauma perspective, we know that helmets absolutely can make a difference and help keep not just our kids safe, but even adults who are biking, especially, you know, people who like to go out and bike on roads. Helmets are of the utmost importance because if there happens to be an accident, those things absolutely do impact safety and help keep people from getting those head injuries.
Thinking of some other things kids like to do in the summertime, like, you know, swimming or on the trampoline, things like that. They need to be careful too. You need to be always aware, right?
Absolutely. So, you know, and a lot of it goes to, and, you know, a lot of us have kids, or even if we don't have children, you know, we have kids in the neighborhood, nieces, nephews, things like that. You know, adult supervision is important, especially with summer activities for kids. Like you said, trampolines with enclosures, supervision when kids are swimming in pools, things like that. They all lead to risk reduction, which is really what we're after with trauma injury prevention, is risk reduction. We know there's always going to be accidents that happen, but if we can do things to reduce risk, we help to keep people safe.
You talked about helmets when you're on the bike, but what about motorcycle safety? I mean, they're all out now because the weather's nice.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, nationwide statistics show that about 71%, so, you know, almost 3/4 of motorcycle riders do wear DOT-approved helmets. But helmets are huge in reduction of risk when riding motorcycles. So 69% of head injuries are avoided when patients riding a motorcycle that have an accident have a helmet on. The leading cause of death and disability with motorcycle accidents comes from head injury. So it shows, and it really points to the fact of how important, not just with bicycles, but with motorcycles as well, just how important wearing a helmet, a proper fitting helmet, is for those riders.
And in the summertime, we heat up. I mean, we've already seen close to 90-degree temperatures, and you really have to be worried about heat safety, right?
Yeah, and so, you know, when we talk about things like safety as far as it comes to heat and heat stroke, things like that, you really have to be in tune with your body. And it can be either you personally or keeping an eye on friends, family members who you may be with, because, you know, heat exhaustion is one thing, and it's imperative to start to pick up on the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion. So, you know, if you're out in the sun, whether it's doing, you know, fun activities, working, whatever it might be, you know, if you start to experience nausea, dizziness, muscle cramps, you know, profuse sweating, things like that, it's very important to take a step out, get in some shade, get in some cool environment, make sure that you stay hydrated. But if you start to notice those signs and symptoms progress to what we would look at from a medical perspective as a heat stroke type of thing, so if the sweating now stops, if there's a loss of consciousness, if the signs and symptoms that are shown start to become more severe, heat stroke is a true medical emergency. And that's when, you know, really we've passed the point of being able to try to get into some shade, get into some shelter, cool down ourselves. And if we feel like someone, ourselves or someone we're around, may be in that area of heat stroke, it's a true medical emergency. And that's when we need to reach out to our local fire and EMS providers and call them for help, because they need to get us to the hospital so we can be treated.
Yeah, and that's another good example where call 911. Don't drive yourself or have someone drive you to the hospital, right?
Absolutely. You know, and I tell people all the time, you know, I think a lot of people don't understand all that can be done in the back of an ambulance. Our fire and EMS providers are the first step to that care, and they start the same treatments that we're going to do in the emergency room at the hospital. And also, if we have that mindset, we can drive ourselves. People don't think about what happens if I would pass out while I'm driving. Things like that can further confound the problems being faced, right? So always use your fire and EMS providers. They're trained professionals. They start that treatment in the back of the ambulance, and they help save lives. So absolutely, that's the best route to take.
Yeah. All right. And one more thing before we're done is fireworks. People like to have fireworks in the summertime at picnics, 4th of July. Be careful, right? I'm sure you've seen a lot of injuries from fireworks.
Absolutely. So, fireworks safety, especially this time of year and as we approach the 4th of July, is of the utmost importance. Number one, we always tell people, there's all different types of fireworks, right? And we all have probably sparklers and things like that, but then there's larger fireworks that are used. So, we always recommend check with your local fire departments and your firefighters in town to find out, what is allowed, what's not allowed per city ordinances, within the state of Ohio, per the Ohio regulations. But number two, if you are going to use fireworks of any sort during the summer holidays, always make sure there's adult supervision. Never allow kids to be using these things alone. Even things like sparklers, they burn at 2,000 degrees. A sparkler itself will burn at 2,000 degrees, which is enough to melt metal. So it shows that that's the importance of having adult supervision, because those things, even though they seem pretty benign, they can very quickly and easily turn into an injury source for children. Other things we see with fireworks, if you ever have, what would be looked at as maybe a dud firework, it's been lit, it didn't go off, never approach that and look into it, because it could just be a delay, and we've seen injuries happen due to that sort of thing. So, handle fireworks with the utmost care, make sure there's adult supervision, and also, especially during the holiday season, make sure the people that would potentially be using fireworks are not under the influence of any alcohol or drugs or anything like that, because that would just increase the chances to have some sort of accident that turns into a traumatic event.
Some great safety tips. Let's have a safe summer. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Holly.
All right, don't go away. New Edition continues in a moment.
The line between caregiver and family